Hi, and we're back, and welcome back to the Counselor, and I am your host, Sheldon Stovall. So we're still continuing our conversation with grief and loss, and they tell me I have another caller on the line. Caller, are you there?
Yes. Good
Hi,
morning.
good morning. So again, you can remain anonymous. You don't have to give your name, but I appreciate you wanting to talk and tell your story on the subject matter. We're talking about grief and loss, especially through these last 2 years with this pandemic going on, the coronavirus. It has been so unfortunate for a lot of people. So, can you kind
Yes.
of tell me your experience that you wanted to share? Just,
Well,
dealing with the
I
pandemic?
wanted to, share some light during this stressful time because, yes, for the last almost 2 years, we've all experienced uh, some loss, whether it's a job, whether it's people we love. Um, but I actually was blessed to experience something totally different.
Interesting. Okay.
Um, Yes. I have had some coworkers that have, passed away due to the pandemic, and that was in itself pretty stressful because I work at a psychiatric hospital.
Okay.
So it is a place that I am an essential worker.
Okay.
But during this last, almost 2 years, I've really been blessed throughout this pandemic. I was
Nice.
able to buy a home, my first home I was able to buy. I,
Congratulations.
was in the position that I work in at the hospital. We actually were deemed non essential at the time, and I was able to work from home.
Okay.
That was a blessing.
Oh, thank you. And
And
just real quick, and just for people that are not familiar, so in the beginning of this entire pandemic situation 2 years ago, what she's saying is that she was deemed as an essential worker, which meant that although countries were shut down, there were certain people that had to go to work. Is that correct?
yes, sir.
Yes, and I believe, because I believe at the time I was doing it too, they gave me a letter. So basically, the police had, shut down, had curfews, but they gave me a letter in case I got stopped. So they better go
Mhm.
to work. Did it happen for you too?
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
All right. So you were at high risk. So we thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
Okay.
And also, while I was working as an essential worker, previous to the hospital recognizing that certain positions didn't really need to be in the midst of, the craziness that was going on.
Hmm.
No pun intended, since I work at a psych hospital. Um, we, were everyone was so confused and didn't really know how to proceed with this virus. And at the time there weren't any mask requirements or any real PPE, uh, available.
Yeah, and just
So
quickly, PPE, you're referring to because you obviously are very professional. PPE are the items that you use for protection. So
yes, sir.
gloves, masks.
Gloves, masks,
Yes. So you,
gowns.
wow. So
Yes.
you're saying that during the beginning of this pandemic crisis, which was 2 years ago, there were no PPE or there was nothing to protect yourself available at the job at the time?
Not at the psych hospital. The regular hospitals, they have these things on a regular,
Hmm.
but we didn't have those, and we weren't allowed to, use masks
Oh,
at that
wow.
time.
Wow.
Um, which obviously within, about a month, it quickly changed.
Of course.
But what I was getting at is that at that time, there were a lot of coworkers that um, tested positive
Hmm.
and became really ill. And one of the coworkers, I was actually in the office with him. We would always, that was a regular thing in the morning. He would make coffee. Some of us would stop by the office, have a cup of coffee, and chat
Hmm.
before beginning our day. And so this particular morning, he expresses that he was the night before was having extreme hot flashes kind of thing. He was sweating. He woke up in a cold sweat.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at him and say to him, well, maybe you should go take your temperature,
Mm-hmm.
which he eventually does. And his temperature was like 103. They sent him home.
Wow.
And I'm sorry, that's my little puppy wants my attention.
That's okay.
He thinks I'm giving you more attention than him. And so it ended up being that he was in the hospital for months. He was given a 30% chance of surviving because he had COVID. But I am so grateful to God that I did not get COVID.
Wow.
And, this happened to me a few times while, we were still actively working at the hospital.
Yeah, so I just can't imagine, not to cut you off, so I can't imagine the fear, that came over the entire company. So at the time were you still required to go in even though the co-worker had clear symptoms of COVID, anything over 101, the temperature?
Yes, at that time. Then eventually, a few weeks later, they sent us an email, said certain positions were not deemed essential and we could work from home.
Wow.
So that was a great blessing for me.
Yes.
So, eventually last year in March, I believe it was, that we returned full time to work at the hospital. So We've been working there since last March.
Okay, just to interrupt.
But now we are having crazy surge patients.
Again.
Just testing positive.
Again, 2 years later.
Right.
Wow.
And so I contracted COVID right before Christmas. And now, I'm not vaccinated. I don't tell people what to do. Okay. So I've chosen not to be vaccinated.
Okay.
And, per CDC, I should have been on a ventilator.
Okay.
Because I was a heavy smoker.
Okay.
I'm older. I'm overweight.
Okay.
But, yes, I had some symptoms, but it was not what I was expecting. I had, the worst was back pain, stuffy nose, and just feeling really tired.
Okay, so let me just interrupt. Let me interrupt you for 1 second. So I just wanted to kind of just segue a little bit. You mentioned that you got a house out of this. So in the midst of, and then we're going to get back to what you were saying about the vaccination. So in the midst of your situation where COVID happened and then you were sent home, were you at that time looking for a house, or did the house come in while you were at home? And did that affect you?
The house came while I was at home. Because, here I am because I currently drive about an hour to go to work and an hour back.
Yeah.
So I waste a lot of gas. Mm-hmm. And sometimes buying lunch and all that other stuff. Okay. So I was able, while we were all required to be staying home, I was able to save some money.
Okay.
I wasn't spending as much money.
Okay.
So I started just saving, and the opportunity came that I met someone that worked as a loan officer. Uh-huh. And she, helped me with that process. Okay, so being able to get to that point.
Cool. So basically you're saying, although you wanted a house, although you were at work, which most people have to, show that they're working and et cetera for the bank, to get approved for a bank loan. Once you were sent home from your job as, deemed now as a non-essential worker, your place shut down, but you continued employment.
Right.
and
I was
you're
still working because
correct.
I'm an interpreter.
Nice.
So I was able to interpret, over the computer.
Nice. And so basically,
So,
you were able to still continue work. And during this process, you were able to get yourself a home.
yes, sir.
Congratulations. All
Thank
right. Now, I do want to move over because we are going to segue from this show, talking about grief and loss, to exactly what you just mentioned. So hopefully we can continue this conversation another time, which is going to be appropriate. And we would love for you to come back just because we're in a few days, we're going to be having a young lady here who was a college professor, and we're going to have an in-person interview with her, so stay tuned for that on The Counselor. But she refuses to go back to work to take the vaccination, and she's refusing to go to get it, so therefore she can't go back to work. So I want to hear what you have to say about that as well. So can I count on you to get back on my calendar in a couple of days, and we'll talk about it?
Sure.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. And tell the puppies I said hi, and you've been interrupting my show the entire time.
Well, sir, you're interrupting his time because today is a snow day.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, caller, and hopefully we'll be talking in a couple of days.
All righty, sir.
Okay. Bye-bye.
The Counselor.